Hello friends, Klage back, and as promised after the Anji matchup chart, we're doing it. We're doing junk food, fighting game content time, everybody's favorite or hated or both thing there is out there that content creators like to do. It's the tier list. 10 years after the release of Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R, I wanted to put together my thoughts with, again, a lot of research, a lot of time and effort, talking to a lot of people whose opinions I trust, and getting as much outside thought and feedback as I could, because while tier lists always have some level of bias to them, I wanted to try and limit that as much as I could. So after a lot of work on this, I'm going to be sharing with you where I think the character strengths lie in this game 10 years after its release. And the game has evolved quite a bit, and I have a lot to say. So this is yet again going to be way too long and probably way too annoying, but as always, I want to thank everyone who helped me out with this. Special shout-outs to my buddy Samifish, who helped give a lot of input and helped me put the final refinements on this list. And let's just go over the important notes real quick. As always, there's no such thing as a perfect tier list. I am not going to be speaking gospel here. You might think completely differently on one or multiple characters, and that's perfectly fine. That's the fun part about these things. They're opinion pieces. They're just here for fun at the end of the day. And the important thing to remember is, especially in a game like Plus R, where the tier list is going to be pretty condensed, as you can see, there's not a wide gap in the letters here. Matchups trump tier list. This is a game about who is the opponent on the other side of the screen, how does your character handle their kit, and all that kind of good stuff. So always remember that tier lists don't mean that much in the day. It's just something fun to do and something I've been wanting to do to share with everybody. So should be hopefully a good time, and hopefully nobody gets too mad. We'll see what we can do there. This is the internet after all. So tiers are going to be ordered right to left, just like the Anji matchup chart was. So the further to the left the character is, the closer they are to bumping up a tier, and vice versa. And yeah, I just want to quickly remind everyone, I don't think there are any bad characters in this game. Even the characters who are quote-unquote the weakest have things to put the fear of God into their opponent with the right situation and the right piloting. So they are there, and I think that's really going to cover everything. So overall, this tier list is going to be assessing the character's strengths relative to the rest of the cast, looking at how consistently they can execute their game plan and how strong that game plan is at consistently scoring wins, scoring constant victories against the entirety of the cast, not just one opponent. So this isn't specifically, oh, this character is good in tournament but not good in other situations. This is just this character strengths relative to each other. So let's get going, because I'm sure I'm going to talk for way too damn long. So we'll start at the bottom, we'll work our way up, and at the very beginning, talk about Bridget. So a common theme you're going to see amongst many of the quote-unquote lower-ranked characters on this tier list is that they usually suffer from one or more of a couple key major flaws in Plus R. It's usually stuff like they're playing the game too fairly, where they have tools and options, but they just aren't blatantly unfair or oppressive. There's a lot of unfair, incredibly strong offensive and defensive options in this game. Another big problem is just, like I said earlier, lacking consistency in executing your game plan or getting to your win condition in a given matchup. And the third thing that often will put a character lower on the list than higher is lacking damage output. Plus R is Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear is a high damage game. There are some characters that simply do not excel at doing damage, and that's a big detriment in a game like this, and Bridget is absolutely in that category. Bridget lacks damage. They do have some good stuff. They have some solid long-range pokes. They can implement some pretty nasty offense and pressure if they can get a situation where they can force you into the corner, put you between Roger and themselves, which is really dangerous. You start getting some pretty solid mix-up, elongated pressure, stuff like that, knockdowns that can loop back into itself. And Bridget is incredibly effective at playing the runaway game once they've secured a life lead. Bridget's ability to stay up high in the air and yo-yo cancel, do a lot of things that can stall out, waste a lot of time, are quite effective. But at the end of the day, Plus R is not a game about running away, and it's not about protecting life leads. It's about defeating your opponent. Bridget's lack of damage, their lack of really oppressive buttons, some of their good buttons are strong pokes, but they also come with pretty notable recovery because of their range. just kind of leaves Bridget with a lot of opportunities to get punished and outright bullied by certain characters in the cast. When you need more than 4 touches to oftentimes kill your opponent, that means you're giving your opponent that many more opportunities to come back and do their offensive game plan, use their oppressive tools, or maybe just flat out rob you with some high damage hits, off a counter or something like that. So Bridget has things, Roger can be very scary. There's some neat force break stuff you can do with force break Roger, and if you can actually corner someone, it can be scary to try to get out of things like Roger Rush, and then Bridget has some pretty solid high-low and a decent throw game to work with. But it's just kind of a weaker version than what a lot of other characters can do in a similar situation. And again, that damage output definitely hinders their overall progress. So in general, Bridget is just a little too fair for plus R. That said, still viable. This character can still win. This character can still beat very strong characters. It's just more often than not, you're going to be working probably a bit harder than your opponent will. Next, other B-plus character here, Robo-Ky. So, unlike Bridget, Robo can definitely chunk out damage. The problem for Robo is that he is a build-up character. Robo has his meter affect the damage and the abilities of his special moves. The more meter Robo has, the better his special moves are. The air bazookas get more shots and home in. The ground bazooka has more hit stun, all of the stuff. He is incredibly reliant on getting a charge mat down and charging meter. Same thing with utilizing his heat gauge properly. The higher levels of steam are very important for his pressure. His normals get very strong if you can manage super high heat for long periods of time. And if Robo hits you once he's got some meter build up, has some level 2s on deck, Robo can chunk your life bar. He can do a grip to you real quick. But the problem is that there's build-up to it. When Robo sits on the field, he is almost certainly a worse character than the person he is standing across from because he has to build up that meter to get going first. The other problem is that he also kind of suffers from that playing just a little too fair problem. Robo has some very good buttons. He can enact some pretty solid pressure and decent stuff off Wake Up with Bazooka. But the big problem is that he doesn't get, ludicrous damage off his command grab anymore. His command grab's still good, still drains some meter, gives him a bunch of meter. But in the one game Robo was good way back in Reload, when Robo command grabbed you, you might die. It did so much damage, drained so much meter, allowed him to get gigantic combos. That's not the case anymore. So Robo's overall mix-up and overall offense is still decent. It's not bad by any stretch, but it's not having this thing where, okay, I'm just going to block and wait it out and try and wait my turn, because eventually you will push Robo out, especially if he expends too much meter. But you used to have to fear the command grab. In this game, you have to be cognizant of the command grab, but it's not going to detonate you on its own anymore. So if Robo wants to get outside of that kind of a little too fair game plan, he usually has to resort to more unorthodox, semi-gimmicky strats like using Detonation Super, which some Robo players use to great effect, and it's really cool if you get to go off, but that is an innately higher risk and more demanding amount of resources to use just to set up your one thing that might be kind of sort of unfair and oppressive. And because of that, Robo just lacks overall consistency and lacks that ability to consistently put the opponent in peril with oppressive offense, oppressive neutral, and just enacting his game plan. So those are the only 2 characters I rank below A- in plus R, to again give you an idea of how tightly wound together the cast is in this game. So up next, the bottom of A+, Zato. So straight up, Zato. I know it's Eddie in Accent Core again. I'm just calling him Zato because so many people, either started with Exert or started with Strive. This is Zato, end of the day. But he's paying for his Accent Core crimes. Accent Core Vanilla, Zato is one of the 2 best characters in the game by a wide margin. And he definitely got knocked down multiple pegs in plus R. He's no longer blessed with the most oppressive force break in the game. Force break drill in Accent Core was unreal. Absolutely unreal. Do everything option for a character that didn't need meter for a lot of other things. Now it's a much more reasonable force break that doesn't fix all of the holes in his game plan, So he has to work a lot harder to gain his pressure, to sustain it. He has to be much more careful when he summons Eddie and Eddie gets killed. He can't just, well, I'll just put out some force break drills, bide my time. Oh, look, Eddie's back. Time to run shop again. That doesn't exist in Plus R. Zato has to earn his cheapness a lot more consistently in this game instead of just having it put on a silver platter for him because he has such a cohesive kit. In this game, there's much more notable gaps. Access to the old Eddie normals, the Eddie Vice moveset, is neat. In a lot of matchups, it doesn't serve much purpose, unfortunately. And just in general, Zato really, really does have to work a lot harder in this game. He also still has one of the worst defensive suites in the game. His pokes are slower in terms of frames for the most part. His dead angle attack is really easy to low profile. He has no real reversal even with meter. So once you make Zato block, he's in trouble. He has to hold pressure and offense for a very long amount of time. And that's not a good place to be for a puppet character. Now that said, he's still a puppet character. He's still Zato, and Eddie still exists. If he can get you in the mix, he still has terrifying mix-up. He still has a command grab. And now he has access to using exhaustion a lot more because he doesn't need as much meter for force break drill since it's not nearly as important to his game plan. And exhaustion can extend Eddie pressure forever. And sooner or later, you're going to get opened up if you are forced to block a puppet and a master for that long. So Zato's still competitive. He just requires a lot of investment. And again, he doesn't have the magic stapler button in force break drill anymore. So gotta work. If you want to play your puppet character, you're going to have to earn it this time. He'll still do a ton of damage on his big conversions, so he's a threat, and that's why he's not in the B+ tier, but definitely a shadow of his former AC self. Next, Justice. So this one might be surprising depending on your personal Justice experiences while playing Plus R. This is the polarizing character of the game. Majority of Justice's matchups tend to be either have or have not. She either just flusters and dominates a character, or she gets blown off the screen because her game plan is so centered around this idea of creating a giant wall of zoning that your opponent cannot pass and cannot get through. There are a few characters that she just almost deletes from the character select screen. Choosing them is such a difficult matchup and comes with so many hurdles to try and overcome that you're probably not going to make it work. On the other hand, there's also characters that just laugh at her basic game plan, absolutely put her in the dumpster for trying to keep them out, and really don't care about nukes or this idea that she can keep you from getting close to her. In addition, even in the matchups where it's a little bit more middling, it's not quite such a polarizing matchup, Justice is still very much reliant on, I need you to never get to me. If you get to me, I'm in trouble. Because Justice is, one, gigantic. She can't duck under basically anything in the game. This enacts really gross things on offense for characters, like using pokes that normally aren't available to them. I talked about this in the Anji matchup chart. She can't duck his standing jab. That's a big problem. It allows her to get fuzzy mixed up way easier once she's knocked down. And this character has no built-in mobility. She has to use a force break to have any kind of true air mobility. She doesn't have a ground dash. She doesn't have an air dash. This leaves her with not a lot of room to get around and get away once she is pinned down. She does have a DP style move. It's very underwhelming. And she does have a catch counter, which is quite good. But if the opponent is looking for it, you're going to die. And it's not a reliable way to blow up most pressure. And it's definitely not a reversal. So if you get to Justice, she's trouble. She really just doesn't have any way to fight back once you're on top of her, unless she's willing to spend resources on trying to catch you with, a dead angle, or try and sneak in her sort of Dragon Punch style flip move and Roman cancel it, that sort of thing. All that being said, her zoning capabilities are strong, and she's one of the best in the entire game by far at just forcing opponents into making errors due to being frustrated and growing impatient. If you play impatiently against this character, if you try to bulldog your way in, you often are just gonna lose. Yeah, she's gonna detonate you with nukes. Her damage output is quite good because nukes crank guard gauge to the moon, so when she does hit you, it hurts quite a bit. A lot of her moves are multi-hitting. It's really easy for her to confirm. And outside of the nuke, she has other good zoning tools. Michael's sword is very fast. It covers a lot of space. And so if you overcommit, she will detonate your life bar. But a lot of characters can at first look like oh man, this matchup is impossible. How do I ever get to her? When you learn how to play patient and you learn how her tool set works, a lot of times you can exploit Justice by just being very patient, waiting your turn, and finally getting in. Because a whole lot of characters in this game, once they knock her down, they don't have to let her go. And because of that giant polarizing nature, and she's such a feast or famine character, that's why I have her quite low on this tier list. Up next, Kai. So, remember earlier when I mentioned about having like your kit be too fair or being too inconsistent in your game plan executing your win condition or having a lack of damage hindering you in this game? That's Kai. Kai's biggest problem, far and away, is he just does not do +R damage. His overall kit is really formidable. Kai has fantastic normals, very good pokes, outstanding anti-air suite. He has a lot of good options for creating pressure and frame traps, a solid tick throw game. His Okazeme is quite good. Charge stun edge, down forward heavy, which is his old forward heavy, is a fantastic meaty poke. Like, Kai can do a lot of things extremely well in +R and can challenge a lot of characters extremely well with what's in his kit. The problem is he basically never actually hurts you when he opens you up. Like, yes, Kai, like anyone, if you play overly passive, can crank your guard gauge and then can chunk off a huge chunk of your life bar. The problem is to get super elongated pressure, Kai usually has to spend a lot of meter. This is a very meter-hungry character in this game. He really needs meter to keep the pressure on, to keep you from trying to interrupt with invulnerable moves, stuff like that. And when he doesn't have meter for damage, he does basically no damage. And when he does have meter for damage, he does still below average damage. This is a character that consistently has to 4 and 5 touch you to win a round. And basically what it boils down to is even though he has a good kit, he has tools to succeed quite well in this game, the law of averages just catches up with Kai. When you need to hit your opponent so many times and you're not a mix-up god, like Kai has good offense, but he is definitely not a can opener at the end of the day. You are going to give your opponent chances to come claw back and hit you with a big counter hit and do real +R damage to you. And so what often ends up happening is characters are willing to take risks against Kai because, yeah, I might get counter hit or maybe I'll get punished for taking this risk. But the punishment isn't that bad, and the reward is you might do 40-50% damage to Kai and get your knockdown and get to run your offense on him. And that is so much easier for the other character to do to success than it is for Kai to finally get the last bits of that life bar done and gone and eliminate his opponent in the round. So he really is a character that, despite having a really solid tool set, the only other thing he really lacks is his defense is kind of he still has some good interrupt pokes. He has a DP, even though Vapor Thrust isn't amazing as a reversal or as an interrupt DP. It's still there. He does have a meterless reversal option, and that counts for something. But he just falls victim to not being able to kill people nearly as fast as everyone else, for the most part, does damage in this game. If Kai did realistic damage, if he did even average +R damage, he is instantly up into this tier, and he might even be threatening to be up here. But needing to hit characters 4 or 5 times at least to kill them in this game, that is a big ask in a game that is offensively bent and has as high average damage as +R does. So unfortunately, that's where Kai sits for now, in my personal opinion. And why not put the main characters back to back on the tier list? Up next, Soul Bad Guy. So kind of in a weird polar opposite here. On paper, Soul looks like a monster in this game. Damage is definitely not a problem for this character. He gets outstanding damage for minimal investment. Oftentimes, he can chunk your life bar without spending a drop of meter. Sidewinder combos, when you can fit multiple clean hit Sidewinders and do it consistently, are some of the best damage for investment in the entire game. Where Soul's major issues come in Plus R is it's kind of how he acts in other games you've seen in Xrd and probably to a little bit of a lesser extent Strive. But he relies heavily on a up-close offensive game plan that is at its strongest when you are conditioning your opponent, making strong reads, and getting them to respect everything you can do. Soul doesn't really have anything at range to threaten you with. His only super long-range move is Grand Viper. Grand Viper obviously comes with gigantic risk. If it gets blocked, you're going to get blown up for it. The reward on it, depending on where it hits and how good you are at getting clean hits, may not even be that good, so risk-reward definitely goes against him for his one at-range move. He also doesn't have the amazing mid-range in this game because Fafnir, if you don't have 25% to do the Force Break extension onto the end of it, is ungodly terrible. That move is punishable on hit by a lot of the members of the cast if you're good at mashing out a stagger. So, Soul has to get in. He has to get in to threaten you. If he does, he gets real scary real fast. He can turn very innocuous hits into big, big damage. I don't ever try to factor execution into tier list placement. Execution is one of those things that with investment becomes a non-factor. It is worth noting that Soul has one of the most high requirements for time invested to do his damage properly of anybody of the cast, because clean hit Sidewinder is ungodly finicky. It is extremely character specific, so you have to learn a plethora of different routes to properly enact your high damage combos, and that is a must. If you are not maxing out your damage with Soul, you're not playing the character properly, and you are basically playing Kai without range at that point and a command grab. That's the only difference. If you can't do your big damage, that's not good. You really have to get it in with Soul when you get your chance. You have to make that damage count. But he does convert into big damage. Once he gets in on you, he can absolutely bulldog you. He does have a command grab, which gives him a layer of mix-up that helps, enact his general game plan. But in general, his mix-up is not fantastic. He doesn't have an amazing high-low game. He's not going to mix you out of your shoes. He really does rely on getting you scared and scoring a big counter hit, you making a mistake, or doing things like getting you to jump at him where he can anti-air you with a 3-frame standing kick and convert it into big damage. So, kind of the polar opposite of Kai. The damage is there. He's absolutely got the ways to delete a life bar. The problem is he just doesn't have enough of a well-rounded kit to play at multiple ranges, and a lot of characters are quite good at just never letting Soul get into range to enact what he is good at. So, up next, Mei. So, get over there. Get over there. All right, fine. We'll just do this. There we go. So, Mei, another character that's been pretty heavily toned down from vanilla Accent Core. She got a pretty big nerf to Overhead Kiss, her command grab. Overhead Kiss used to be a standard, I reach out, I grab you, it's a command grab kind of thing. It's now been changed from that to a running bear style grab. She has to go through a dash animation, run up and grab you before she starts actually throwing you. And that impacted her basic mix-up game really, really heavily. One of the things that Mei does struggle with, even when she's really good, is that her conversions at max range aren't incredible. A lot of times she just has to settle for taking a knockdown with, down forward kick, her slide button. It used to be when you knock someone down, that was a massive advantage because Mei had one of the best strike throw mix-up games on Oki of anyone in the game because she has an unthrowable normal in stand kick. You can't throw that move. It's not considered throwable, which meant she had a fantastic Oki tick throw game. Now that doesn't work nearly as well because Oki tick throw games aren't nearly impressive when your command grab has to involve you doing a dash animation for 4 or 5 steps before it even grabs someone. All that said, still has really impressive normals with really scary hitboxes. Her air buttons are still oppressive as hell. She has incredibly the fastest jump speed in the game, so incredible air mobility with a good super jump. So challenging her in the air is a very difficult task for a whole lot of characters. If she gets a counter hit in the air, like off jump heavy, it's not guaranteed like it was in Accent Core, where even if she hit you at the top of the screen, she was going to get a full dolphin loop. But still, if she counter hits you and knows how to convert, it's going to hurt. On the ground, still has very, very good buttons with very, very disjointed or difficult to challenge hitboxes. Stuff like stand heavy, far punch. And in general, challenging her on the ground can also be kind of difficult because the threat of force break dolphin means it's a lot harder to call out things like forward punching a dolphin, because she might just throw it at you instead of riding it, and then she gets to do a full combo for that. She also has one of the best abilities at stunning characters in the game. Charging forward punch and charging forward heavy allow her to stun characters that often don't get stunned easily. So she can rob people in a lot of ways. A counter hit or a random stun, she absolutely can still rob some characters. But at the end of the day, lacking that strike throw mix-up means her range is less threatening. And in general, she doesn't get quite the juicy combos she used to off innocuous hits in Accent Core. So she's still quite good. She does what she does very well. She jumps around, she throws out big buttons, she covers space pretty safely because her buttons have good recovery, and her counter hit game is quite good. It's just not at that elite level to make her as consistently scary and consistently, oh, you got hit by this counter hit? Yeah, you're dead. This round's over. That can happen. It's just not nearly as consistent as it used to be. So that's why I put Mei in the A- tier. So, next, Venom. So, here we have yet another assassin character that got quite a few touches from vanilla Accent Core, but Venom is still, a very threatening character in a lot of ways. Still one of the most valuable characters in fighting games, period. He has the ability to play at range, has the ability to play up close with very, very good pressure and very, very good offense, and transition in and out of these options quite readily. So he has the ability to be a threat regardless of what's going on at the screen, especially with some resources stocked up. Venom with meter has a lot of ways to give you a tough time. His main struggles in +R, one, come from an incredibly weak defensive tool set. +R is a game where you have a myriad of characters that have incredibly strong and impressive offense, whether it be via pressure and rushdown or whether it be via Okizeme and mix-up or a combination thereof. He really has no get-off-me tools outside of his dead angle attack. Obviously, that's 50% meter. Venom is not Exord Venom. He doesn't build meter nearly as quickly as he does in that game, so 50% is a lot more precious to him in this game. And his anti-air is okay. It's not great. He doesn't have Exord forward punch in this game. It's the same animation. It's just not the same button in terms of absolutely destroying someone for jumping in on you. He also does kind of suffer with his baseline damage is a little bit below average. It's not Kai level, especially for a couple regions. He kind of like Kai relies on cranking your guard gauge to do big damage. The difference is Venom's very good at doing that, while Kai is modestly good at doing that. Venom can do it consistently. He also gets access to arguably the best chip damage game there is. Venom is extremely good at causing chip damage between all his projectiles, things like Dark Angel. He can absolutely cause a lot of extra damage, even without doing ridiculous baseline damage on his combos due to his ability to chip. His pressure in Oki still quite good. If he knocks you down, you're going to have to fade having pool balls set. He has a lot of safe jump setups. He has a lot of way to make you block for a long period of time, especially if he has meter to extend. And he can oftentimes dictate the pace of play very well in most matchups. He can scrap with almost anyone in the cast for the most part. But that very weak defensive suite and his reliance on resources to get the most out of his offense, the most out of his pressure, kind of tilts him not quite to that I play a super unfair game of offense and pressure. It's just this is a really good offensive and pressure game. It's just not elite. And that's why I don't think Venom quite makes it into the A tier. One other last notable thing on him. Venoms have to learn how to account for faultless defense more than anybody. Faultless defense can alter how his pressure works quite a bit. So if you're not on top of that and are prepared to alter your game plan, prepared to spend meter. Faultless Defense is really good against Venom. If you're having trouble fighting Venom, try incorporating more FD in your game. It is really important against this character. So just a little note there to keep track of. All right, up next, Ino. So Ino got quite the glow up in Plus R. Ino was not a very good character in Vanilla Accent Core. She got wheelchaired after her very, very potent version of Guilty Gear Slash. But she's back to being a mix-up monster in this. Her unique hover dash gives her access to a high-low game that very few characters can rival. A lot like Venom, she's quite good at transitioning from playing at range to playing at offense and rushing you down, mixing you up quite well. She's very good at those valuable situations. Her main issues in this game are, one, her buttons are extremely specialized. Ino has no magic buttons. She doesn't have, a far slash, a close slash, a forward punch that just kind of staples everything together for her. She also has no reversals without meters, so her defense is on the weaker side. She does have a very long-range backdash, which can be quite nice for getting her out of situations, and obviously her air mobility is very, very good. In addition to those specialized buttons, she also has somewhat of a dead zone at the close mid-range area of the screen, where the startup on her hover dash is close enough that characters can challenge her for trying to do that. They can poke her out of the startup of it. The only button she really has that challenges that range is Far S, which is actually quite a good disjointed button in this game, but it's a very specific button. Again, you want to use it for very specific situations. So she has to consistently be choosing the right tool for the right job if she wants to excel. Now, if she can get in and start enforcing her mix-up and get on the offensive, her Oki is real scary. It's Ino Oki. She's going to put a note on you. She's going to do the high-low game. It's going to be difficult to see. A lot of it is nigh unreactable. And she still does fantastic damage in this game. She needs the corner to do the true I blow up your bar damage, but once you knock someone down, you're basically one offensive string away from probably pushing them towards the corner or just getting there outright by spending some meter with Chemical Love FRC. She's one of those characters that she can take a single knockdown and she can run it all the way home from there. So that alone makes her extremely viable, and as you can see, she's pretty far to the left on this A- area, bordering up into A territory. Again, just the hyper specialization on her buttons, and the fact that there are other characters in this game that can do a similar rushdown Oki mix-up style game plan, but have a more synergistic kit to top it off, are the reasons that I don't put Ino any higher than this. And with that, we are on to A tier. So up next, Potemkin. So Potemkin continues his run of being a very, very strong accent core character. He is still a terrifying grappler, and he is one gap in your pressure away from completely turning a match on its head and taking it away from you. Potemkin's weaknesses have been consistent pretty much through the character's existence, in the entire Guilty Gear series. He has no mobility, no dash, no air dash, nothing to get him to move around. Obviously, he has a gigantic hitbox, which allows for unique combos, allows for unique fuzzy setups when he's put on the defensive. And, he has to hold some pokes that other characters don't. Like I said in the Anji matchup chart, the other character that can't duck his standing jab. So, that's difficult to deal with. Obviously, is a, heavy-handed base grappler. He doesn't have super fast counter pokes or things to try and mash his way out, but guess what? You don't need that because Potemkin Buster exists. It's a 3-frame command grab with absolutely obscene range. So Potemkin, despite not having mobility, despite not having amazing defensive options in the traditional sense, you can't leave gaps in your pressure on this character. You try to frame trap him and it's not +4 or better, you're in trouble. You will get gripped. This is compounded by the fact that most people who specialize as Potemkin players focus heavily on defense because they know they have to play good defense to excel with this character. Specifically, you have to excel with instant block, and if you instant block correctly, you knock 2 frames off your block stun, which means now something has to be +6 or better to allow you to do any kind of frame trap or gap in your pressure, or you have to do it out of range of Potemkin Buster. So that alone obviously keeps him in any matchup. You make a single mistake, you leave a gap in your pressure, you don't punish a backdash, which, by the way, he has an incredible backdash. Lasts forever, it's invulnerable for all but 1 frame. If you get Potemkin Bustered, you're in trouble, because it puts you right next to him in the corner. He gets full combos off it. Many characters with big hitboxes, he can just get full combos into Heat Grab anyway, and anytime Potemkin combos into Heat Grab, you fall right at his feet, and this character has shockingly good Oki. He has an overhead that can be super canceled and for big damage and stun. He has incredibly good lows that are very, very good at baiting out any kind of throw mash attempts. He has ways to bait reversals out. So for a character who's, bread and butter is I do big command grab, mash big damage, his Oki is actually really, really scary. So, yes, certain characters will zone Potemkin forever and make him have a terrible, terrible time. Potemkin will have some matchups and some games where he just doesn't get to the opponent and it's a curb stomp because he never gets to play offense. But Potemkin is the kind of character that takes a 95% life deficit, gets 1 command grab, and suddenly the match is in peril. And that alone is why I keep him in the A tier, just above A-, because he's never truly out of it. Even matchups where people can hold him at bay, never be in Potemkin Buster range. All it takes is 1 stray counter hit, 1 stray flick, something that lets him get in, or 1 good read, and you might never get away. Entirely possible for this character to run it all the way back off a single grab. So that alone, I think, is why he belongs in the A tier. Up next, Order Soul. Good old Haas. So it's taken quite a few iterations, but they finally got Order Soul to be the offensive bulldog his kit was designed to be, and he's very, very good at that in +R. What he makes, or what he lacks in range, obviously he still plays somewhat similar to Soul in terms of buttons. He has to be up close to be truly threatening. His buttons are still very quality. He's got solid pokes, very fast buttons, tons of buttons with frame advantage, and he also has a Johnny-style miscancel, which allows him to do conversions, allows him to create pressure with buttons that you would normally want to have to special cancel. He's not required to do that. And because of that, he is a very, very good rushdown character. He has an SNK-style short hop. His throw game is terrifying once he gets you to the corner. And so he finally is an offensive juggernaut in this game. The issues Haas has, for the most part, is he's kind of like Robo. He has to build up his levels to truly unlock his potential and his stronger tools. He has to charge up his charge meter for his specials to gain their higher level properties, to be more threatening, gain better frame advantage, do more damage. Haas at base level, at level 1, his damage output pretty lacking. Definitely nothing to write home about. Could even argue that it's somewhat similar to Kai output. The thing is that unlike Robo, it takes very little for Haas to get up to level 2 where he suddenly becomes a threat. He has access to his action charge, which is the end of specials. He can hit the D button, does the pose, and the flash happens. It has an FRC on it to make it extremely safe. That builds him a ton of meter. The changes they made to him so that meter maintains now for much longer is very, very good. So he can get to level 2 quickly, and he can stay in level 2 for a lot longer, and that's what makes him truly threatening now. Once he's at level 2, this character is an absolute threat. So even though he starts out, in a base form that's not all that threatening, it's much easier for him to get his game plan rolling than it is, say, like Robo, especially because while he is very susceptible to zoning, he's a short-range, rushdown style character. If you just leave Haas to his devices across the screen, he has also an SNK-style charge where he just stands there and builds his charge meter up. If you just let him sit there and go to level 3, you're not going to have a very good time, because once he's got full charge on deck, he is real scary. Once he's on top of you, he's a frame trap monster. Character has really, really good buttons. He can keep pressure going for a long time, dare you to mash on him, and then get a counter hit converted into big-time damage. As I said earlier, if he forces you into the corner, his throw game becomes beyond elite. He has a good tick throw game regardless of where you are on the screen. In the corner, it's especially threatening because his throw causes wall stick. And wall stick for Haas means he gets to do his version of dust loops on you. Those things hurt, especially if you've been blocking for a while and your guard gauge is cranked up. So, you know, he's kind of similar into Soul in that if you can keep him out, the threat level is relatively low. His anti-air game isn't as strong as regular Soul's. He has a similar standing kick, but it doesn't hit near quite as high up, so it's not as good to just stuff people. But if this character can get to you and start his offense, he's real scary in this game. Absolutely a rushdown monster once he has some charge and is forcing you on the back foot. And once he starts converting, it's real scary. His high-low is also very, very strong. He has multiple fast ways to chain into overheads because of how Bandit Revolver works. He has an elite long-range low in Fafnir if he wants to spin some tension. So, yeah, very, very, very good character, probably for the first time ever. They finally got Order Soul to be a real character, and it took a long time, but in Plus R, he is no slouch whatsoever. Pardon me while I get a drink there. All right, up next, Slayer. So, not quite the absolute beast he was in Vanilla Accent Core, but he still excels at what Slayer excels at best. He can take a single hit, convert it into massive damage, and his unique tool set of movement, pokes, and stuff allow him to play, on paper, a very linear game, but still a very threatening game. You know, his dash has invulnerability, even his forward dash. It's not a huge window of invulnerability, but allows him to get in ways other characters cannot. Obviously, Dandy Step is a very unique movement mechanic, which has to be accounted for at all times. So, despite being a very, you know, horizontal, mostly ground-based character, Slayer is still quite good at what he does. His weaknesses are that linearity in a nutshell. He doesn't have a run, so his teleport dash means, you know, he's only going this way or that way. There's not a lot of middle ground. His air dash is quite slow. So characters who can excel at controlling horizontal space can make it really difficult for Slayer to actually start his game plan. He's a very tall character, so he suffers from a lot of his pokes and specials being able to be low-profile. Characters with really good low-profile moves like Bad Guy's Sweep, you know, Axel's Crouching Kick, that sort of thing can go under a lot of Slayer's stuff. The other big thing is that linearity in that range is a little bit more of a problem for him in this game because Dead on Time is no longer 0 frames after the flash. And in Vanilla Accent Core, Dead on Time was 0 frames after the flash. If you saw someone whiff something or they were in recovery and you put Dead on Time, they were getting counter hit, and counter hit Dead on Time kills you. You're gonna die when that happens. In this game, that's not quite as near of a guarantee. Still an option. I believe it's only 1 frame after the flash, so it's still there. It's just not the absolute full screen monster it was in the old game, and that does limit his game plan a little bit more. It does allow people to fixate on trying to keep him out of range to excel. That being said, still boasts some outstanding pokes: stand kick, crouching heavy, really, really, really good pokes, even though he has an extremely limited Gatling table. Slayer's very similar to Exert Heihyun, where he has mostly either late Gatlings or links to make things go together. And he also is an excellent character for taking reads on opponents and just getting exceptional risk-reward off those reads. He also still has backdash cancel. Yes, it's not as good as it was in the early XX games, but anytime you can take a bunch of frames of invulnerability and stick it on your special moves, that's pretty good. Not a bad thing to have in your kit whatsoever. So, you know, that's another unique tool he can fluster people with when they're up close. And people who are being incredibly passive, he does have access to his command grab skill. It's not nearly as threatening as it used to be, but it's one more thing they have to account for. And once he's in, you know, his mix-up game, his pressure game, very, very solid. He has incredibly good frames on most of his pokes. He has access to good standing overheads and lows, both of which can confirm into big damage. He can call out stuff with his very good hit boxes on things like forward punch. If they're near the corner, you get a wall bounce into big damage. And obviously, if you want to play the big risk style Slayer and throw out big moves like Pile Bunker and EX Dandy moves. That's there too. And the conversion and reward for hitting those is large. Slayer is a character, he's got some high defense, so he can play that risk-reward game pretty well. But again, he is somewhat linear. He is prone to having space, controlled in front of him that he has a hard time getting through. And because of that, he's not quite the god tier monster he was in the old game. But still, don't get counter hit. You don't want to get counter hit by Slayer. It's bad time. Up next, probably one of the ones I think will surprise people quite a bit, if there is going to be a surprise, Kliff. So I think this is the character that has evolved the absolute most over the lifespan of Plus R. Kliff is very much designed around playing with having a bit of a gambler's mentality. The thing is that his gambling can have some gigantic dividends. This character on paper and by the eyeball test looks very linear and very limited, like straightforward. It's like, he swings the big butter knife and he puts the projectile on. Okay, I get it. This can't be that hard, right? But despite all that, there's one thing that this character is absolutely the master of. He is the master of robbing you, and he is the master of getting robbed. And I'll go into that more as we break down his kit here. So the big weakness, the big thing that Kliff has going against him, aside from having not great movement, he has a step dash that doesn't go very far, and his air dash is very slow. This is made up for by the fact that, he got the big butter knife, and that thing covers a lot of ground. But the other big weakness that Kliff has is he has pathetic stun resistance, tied for the lowest in the game with Dizzy. And that alone would be bad. The problem is that to really hit home the lore of the fact that Kliff is old, technically he's dead, but we don't worry about that, fighting game lore. A lot of his moves actively raise his stun. The stun bar is not visible in Guilty Gear XX. You can't see it when someone's stunned. The only thing you get is the portrait flashing red, warning you that you're close to being stunned. Many of Kliff's moves actively raise his stun, even if he's not being hit. So what this means is, despite having incredible hitboxes, really, really good hitboxes, and absolutely ludicrous damage conversion, as soon as Kliff has 25%, look out. If he gets one good hit, you're going for the ride. But because of this, it means he is literally almost always one hit away from absolute disaster. Constantly raising your own stun bar means if you get counter hit once, you might get stunned, even by characters who don't particularly excel at raising stun. So for quite a while in this game's lifespan, Kliff was kind of looked at as pretty weak. He was, here's this straightforward character. He's not super tricky, and he's always one hit away from just losing on the spot. So he can't possibly be very good. So for a long time, Kliff was looked at as one of, if not the weakest character in the game, because people felt like he was just too flawed. In addition, despite him having really, really good range, there are characters who can outrange him, especially in key spots with the way his hitboxes work, and that can give him real headaches. That said, it's been 10 years since the game released, and some very, very good players have refined this character, refined his game plan, and developed a shocking amount of consistency by using his excellence in space control, using his excellent pokes, and absolutely getting the most out of his conversions. Like I said, this character absolutely dumps truckloads of damage on you for very minimal meter investment. It's something he absolutely excels at. He also is quite good at returning the favor of stunning you due to things like Force Break Chop and his ability to punish things massively, even if they're small mistakes, because of his range and his convertibility. On top of that, he also boasts, really good Oki. It's basic. It's very, very basic. He puts a big projectile on you. It has an FRC, and he can make you hold that and try and deal with a mix-up. He has pretty good fuzzy mix-up because of the way his jump and his hitboxes work. And so he has all that stuff. He can use the taunt to spit out the kanji for Baka, make you block that. That gives him access to more Oki options. And all of that makes him very, very good. Very consistent character. He has incredible pokes all around. Like I said in the Anji matchup chart, character sweep is just incredible. Absolutely ludicrous button, top to bottom. So good. And all that being said, you can play him super consistently now. Or you can just go ahead and go to the table, roll them dice, and do stuff like go up, make a hard read with a gold burst, and if it hits, you can insta-kill your opponent on the spot because you get to force break, chop, Roman cancel, insta-kill, die! So the thing that I think is really interesting about the character is, like I said, I feel like he's the most refined, the most changed character in the lifespan of Plus R overall. But you also can still just be a jackass, right? You can just be like, no, I'm here to rob you. I'm not here to play a game. Give me your life bar. It's mine now. So, but yeah, this character, I think, it was one of the most misunderstood. And really, really strong players have put a lot of effort into making him not just this gambly kind of, roll the dice. If you dodge and your back goes out, well, that sucks. But maybe next time, no. This character is not easy to fight. He has a couple matchups where characters who can outrange him and can outpoke him definitely give him problems, but the nature of this character and his damage output means he is never, ever out of a fight. And because of that, because he has that rob or be robbed ability while also having developed a very consistent game plan that's very effective when executed, I think that's deserving of being dead middle of the cast right there in the A tier. So that's where I put Kliff. Up next, Johnny. So another character that got a big old glow up from Vanilla Accent Core. Much, much, much stronger character than his Vanilla Accent Core version. Johnny's back to being the super flashy, high damage monster that he's known to be. Obviously, Johnny known for having amazing pokes with really, really great safety thanks to miss cancel. His movement is shockingly fast for what he is, having a step dash. His air movement, really, really good. His backdash, absolutely elite. Incredible backdash. Moves really fast, gets him out of a lot of stuff, lets him set up for the kind of range he wants to play at with his pokes. And so he has a lot going for him in terms of mobility that you wouldn't expect from a character like this. Where his main struggles come in is that his damage is subpar until he gets level 2 Misfinder on deck. His basic confirm without level 2 Misfinder is very whatever. Nothing to write home about. So Johnny does have to earn his way to get that hit and get a coin on you before he becomes Johnny. Until then, he's just a character with really good pokes that can play fairly safely and is fairly annoying. If you've only fought Johnny in like Xrd, Accent Core coin is not Xrd coin. It's not this unpunishable juggernaut that's a guaranteed loop into itself like it is in Xrd. But level 2 Misfinder still leads to big old damage. So once Johnny does get a coin on you, he becomes an absolute terror again. That coin can just be a struggle just in general because, like Slayer, Johnny's very tall. He's prone to being low-profiled by a lot of things. And anyone who can challenge his max range pokes and neutral can be pretty frustrating for him to fight. But, and there's a big but, once that coin's on you, the fear, it is real. His character's damage conversions, his opportunities to set up unblockables, and very, very good mix-up in the form of strike throw become excellent once he has one coin on you. Because if Johnny converts a hit off a level 2 Misfinder, it's going to hurt a lot. And a lot of times he can set up, put you back into level 2 by getting a coin because he wall bounces, throws another coin, finishes the combo, puts you down on the ground, lets loose Baka's side. Oh, look, now this character gets to do unblockables. Those have been made much more reliable thanks to things like Upcoin, thanks to getting back his down forward heavy, which is an incredible active frame button. So he can actually make you sit still on Wake Up now, which makes doing things like the unblockable setups much more realistic for a lot of matchups. This also helped tighten up gaps in things like his Oki and pressure game. Upcoin is just, it's stupid. I don't know what else to say except that Upcoin's dumb. It's one of those things that even when the game first came out, a whole lot of us were like, but why though? So as long as Johnny can get to level 2 Misfinder, he is a threat in every single matchup he plays in. And again, he's back to being probably the single most stylish character in the game. And it's weird to say now after so many of us lived through the Xrd era where Johnny was just, oh my god, why is this a thing? Seeing Johnny be a good character again and be stylish in Plus R was a welcome change. after him basically being real bad in Accent Core. Not very good, not a very cohesive kit. So, yeah, he's Johnny. He's not X or S tier Johnny, but don't get hit once that coin's on you. You're going to have a bad time. All right. Up next, ABA, ABBA. For my salt, I think this, along with Kliff, is the most misunderstood character in the game. Especially in Japan, they have often considered this character to be far too risky, and having to start out in her normal mode, which is not a good character. You know, poor mobility, poor options, poor damage, very little upside to playing ABA in her normal mode, right? That meant she just wasn't viable. People felt she is way too inconsistent, way too gambly to be a threatening character in any form of consistency, right? And if you've played any of the top ABA players in +R Online, or watched any of the high-end tournaments since rollback netcode got implemented, you'll see that's completely wrong. ABA's flaws are really blatant, right? Normal mode, again, really no upside to it. She's not threatening. She doesn't have anything going for her. She can't do a grip of damage to you in normal mode. She's just not much of a character. But as soon as she can get into Moroha mode, as soon as she can get into the mode that she is known for, she becomes one of the best characters in the game, hands down. Even in normal mode, this character's hitboxes are obscene. Her character hitbox is super annoying for a whole lot of characters to combo because it's just janky. It's really janky. Her actual attack hitboxes oftentimes feel borderline unfinished. They are so disjointed that a lot of her buttons, even in normal mode, and especially once she's in Moroha, you just can't challenge this character with pokes. Like, she is going to beat you, you're going to get counter hit, and then this character is going to do an absolute truckload of damage to you. Once she's in Moroha mode, this character's offensive ability just goes through the charts, right? And, of course, there is the caveat with Moroha mode, right? You have to manage Moroha mode well. You have to manage all of her resources well. She only has 3 blood packs. The blood packs are what allow her to transition into or out of Moroha mode without landing her command grab, the key grab. Those are really important. If you mismanage those, you can lose a round on the spot. If ABA runs out of Moroha meter, or she is knocked down with less than a third of the Moroha gauge left, she wakes up into a guaranteed stun animation that is so long, a not insignificant amount of characters can instant kill her on the spot for it. Even if they don't have meter, they can activate IK mode and kill her before she recovers from the stun. This, again, plays into that idea that the character is too inconsistent, too gambly to play. She just... It's too easy for this character to fall apart because she's always at risk of a mismanagement of her resources and just dying on the spot. It's not, oh, I mismanaged resources and now I get punished. No, it's I mismanaged resources and now I die. But it doesn't matter because Moroha is so good, and then they went and gave her what is one of the best, if not the single best, install super in any Arxis game ever made in Goku Moroha. Goku Moroha is cracked. Absolutely just, I can't believe this is a thing every time I see it. It's install super that completely refills her Moroha gauge. It has an active hitbox, so if you're doing anything, you get staggered, which is going to be a free combo for her. And even if you block it, it's plus on block. So all she has to do is get 50% meter and have any space whatsoever. She goes into Goku Moroha mode, and now she is legitimately the best character in the game. She has all the same ludicrous hitboxes with amazing range and amazing convertibility, except now she's even faster. Now she gets even better damage, and if you get hit, you're probably dead. Because of Goku Moroha getting changed and making it so ABA can stay in Moroha mode for much longer stretches of time without resorting to going into normal mode or without resorting to using a blood pack, it made her stability and her consistency so much higher. It's so much easier to get to the point where all you have to do is get into Moroha once, and that might be enough to win the round outright. Because so many characters just cannot challenge this character. And even if you find gaps, if you get one knockdown and take a third of her Moroha gauge away, right? She has things like Donzai. She has things like Force Break Donzai that even if you know they're coming, are not easy things to punish and bait. They take very specified changes to your offensive structure to punish ABAs for just going, bah, I don't want to hold your mix-up. I don't want to hold your Oki toy. Get out of here. I have big key. You leave now. And because of that, this character played right, played to her highest level, is incredibly consistent. She gets into Moroha. Eventually, she goes into Goku Moroha. And more often than not, she's either going to kill you, or she's going to do so much damage and then regain all the health she spent using Goku Moroha, get back into normal mode, and have a blood pack left to reactivate Moroha mode, and then it's just a wrap. You're just not going to recover from that. The only reason I don't put ABA higher than this is because there is still the high risk but extremely high reward playstyle to this character, right? When she's in Moroha mode, she actively damages herself for using her buttons. Every time she does things, she takes damage, right? So if she doesn't actually get out of Moroha mode via key grab or using a blood pack, or she fails to manage her resources and her meter right, a straight counter hit can mean she just loses all that life. She can go from blowing up your life bar and you never having touched her to her having 5% health and nothing left because you counter hit her at just the wrong time for her. And so that risk did not go away. ABA is still a risky character inherently of her design. It's just that the top players have gotten so good at managing the tools she has and using the absolutely oppressive pressure and offense that she has once she's in Moroha and Goku Moroha to just make sure that the goal is I get into Moroha and then I win the game. And when you look at it that way and you know how to approach it like that, this character becomes so much more frightening and so much more difficult to deal with. There are characters that give her a very hard time, even with access to Moroha and Goku Moroha. It's just the nature of the character's style. She has a very hard time against Justice, for example. Faust can out-poke her in a lot of situations, which makes it a lot more difficult to just get into Moroha and win. But for the vast majority of this character's matchup, even against many of the best characters in the game, if she gets into Moroha and in Goku Moroha, you're probably dead. And that is why I think this character deserves to be much, much higher up the list than she's usually rated early on in the game's lifespan, especially in Japan. In the West, I feel like this character's always kind of been viewed as, yeah, no, this character's actually pretty scary, but, you know, risk-reward. Anymore, I think this character is just flat out scary, period. The risk of having to deal with normal mode and the threat of messing up from mismanaged resources in Moroha mode is easily outweighed by how just ludicrous Goku Moroha is. So, up next, probably the one that a lot of people are waiting to hear, Anji. So, I done my best to put all bias aside with where I put Anji in the tier list. Obviously, that's not the easiest thing to do. You guys know my relationship with this character and all that, so take it with a grain of salt. But I do, honestly, all bias aside, believe that Anji deserves to be a top 10 character in Plus R, and that's where I have him on this list, in the start of the top 10. Anji has a tool for every situation. His kit provides so many ways to challenge opponents on offense, defense, and neutral that he rarely has a situation where he just can't play the game. Those are very, very, very few far in between, which if you watch the matchup chart video, makes sense. None of his matchups are terrible. None of his matchups are curb stomps either. So his weakness, as I mentioned multiple times during that video, revolves around anyone who can stuff Fujin and his other options with really good lows. It's much more difficult to auto-guard lows than high because it's much more committal and difficult to do in neutral. Anyone who can disrespect Butterfly obviously makes his life harder. Butterfly is a very potent part of his kit. Having good Butterfly Oki makes matchups far easier for him than the ones where he doesn't have it. And in general, he needs meter to do real damage. His non-meter damage without a big counter hit off something is pretty meh. As soon as he's got 25% on deck for Force Break Rein, we're good. Really solid damage output. And he builds meter quite reliably in this game because of the way his playstyle works. So it's rarely an issue, but it is important to note that he is one of those characters that really does need meter to do his proper combos and proper damage. Anji has so many good buttons, but none of, again, kind of similar to earlier when I was talking about Ino, there are no magic buttons. The difference is Anji's aren't nearly as specialized. He has buttons that cover a few uses, just not all of them, and his overall normal kit synergizes very, very well because it's very good at covering the weakness of other buttons. As I mentioned in the matchup chart, his standing jab is a godlike poke. Absolutely incredible low-risk anti-air that allows for conversions he has no business getting off a stand jab. You know, Fujin obviously is infamous despite it not being the linchpin to his game that everyone thinks it is. Yes, it's very important. Yes, matchups where Fujin is dominant are far easier for him than options where they're not. But it's what makes Fujin so good is that the rest of his kit makes Fujin work. You know, his auto guard is a thing that no other character has access to in the sheer amount that he does. It allows him to build in ways to deter mashing when he's on offense. It allows him to literally have a non-metered reversal if he's willing to guess if someone's going to do a low or a high. Because he can one-frame auto guard low on wake up, and he can one-frame auto guard mids and highs on wake up with forward kick and down forward slash respectively. Big risk, obviously, but that's the nature of using a non-metered reversal. But that's a big bonus for him, obviously. His reward off successful auto guards, especially with So, is gigantic. You don't even have to spend meter if you're good at hitting one-frame links. And if you want to spend 25%, you can get some seriously juicy combos off of those. In addition, his air game is elite. His super jump's incredible. He has very, very good pokes to contest other characters in the air with jump kick, jump slash, and jump dust. And just overall, he's the most cohesive he's ever been. His butterfly game is very good. He has more than enough mix-up options to have mix, but he doesn't have to use mix in butterfly. He can just take that opportunity to have really safe offensive pressure and crank up your guard gauge while maintaining the kind of range he wants to maintain. Then you get the cherry on top of Force Break Butterfly is much better in this game, so it's actually realistic to set up unblockables very consistently. And you just have an incredibly well-rounded character. He has the highest guts in the game. It allows him to stay in fights longer than he should in certain situations. So at the end of the day, he just scraps. He scraps with every single character in the cast, and he's very good at fighting quite a few of the strong members of the cast, which is a very nice luxury to have in this game. It's not Anji's really good against everyone in the same tier and below him. It's that he can fight pretty much anyone, and that's really important in terms of being a consistent character. So that is why I think he deserves top 10 billing. But again, he has some very notable ways to counter him, and he doesn't do anything that is absolute over the top oppressive in one facet. And that's why I don't think he quite gets into A+ tier, but is in my top 10. Up next, Axel. We are into the A+ now. So, what if Justice was just way more consistent and was really effective at fighting the strongest characters in the game? You'd have Axel. Axel remains a somewhat unpopular character just because of the nature of his playstyle, but his potential is vast in +R. Obviously, incredible pokes. His zoning is very, very effective. He stifles a ton of the cast trying to approach him. His pokes have vacuum effects on them, which make them even more annoying to deal with, because if you block any of them, he gets to pressure you at range. He also has the luxury of really, really good conversion with a little bit of resources, and his big conversions have great corner carries, so he gets to do a giant chunk of damage to you and put you in the corner, which is always nice to have. His weaknesses are exactly what Axel's weaknesses, always are. He is susceptible to super high mobility and speed characters who are good at navigating his range and zoning. he exchanges speed for length on all of his buttons, obviously. So he's not amazing at interrupting when he's on the back foot and being forced to play defense. And if someone wants to make a hard read and air dash over Rensengeki or whatnot, they can call him out and obviously punish him because his buttons have notable recovery on them. Obviously, that's the price you pay for having a lot of space control. The other thing that's kind of lacking overall for Axel is his mix-up isn't super impressive. Forward H is not a super fast overhead. He doesn't have any really, really tricky mix-up going for him, but he does have a shockingly solid risk-reward for a basic strike-throw game because he's one of the characters that gets really, really good combos off a throw, so he does have that going for him in that department. What he does excel at is exactly what you expect him to do. Like I said, all his pokes vacuum, so navigating that wall of the chains is real difficult to do. His conversions are fantastic. Because of the nature of the vacuum on those pokes, he can crank guard gauge quite well, and if you get hit with a cranked guard gauge by Axel, sorry about your accident. And as I said earlier, his confirms grant him excellent corner carry, and that is always super, super nice to be able to force your opponent into limited real estate to try and navigate your high area of coverage with those pokes, right? He also has shockingly okay defense for being a zoner style character. His auto guard counter is frame 1 and covers the mids and highs, so you are forced to use lows against the character meaty in a lot of situations. It's a thing that activates. It's a very improved thing in +R, very powerful tool. He also can try and interrupt or reversal lows. He does have a DP. It's pretty mediocre, but it's still there, something that you have to account for. So just getting to Axel is not like getting to Justice. Axel actually does have ways to fight back and has legit reversals to try and deal with you. His dead angle attack is pretty bad. It hits super, super high. It's even easier to low profile than stuff like Eddie's. So that part is kind of whatever. But in general, his range and his damage allow him to challenge the best in the game. This character is excellent at fighting the toppest of the top tiers. He handles the best characters in the game better than most. And so, all of that, his consistent damage for only a little bit of meter use, it gives him super high comeback potential. And that alone, that is why I think he is the start of A+ tier. Just all around very, very good character that can be very frustrating to fight against. Next, Jam. So Jam plays a somewhat similar gameplay into Soul, where she has very bad range overall, some of the worst range in the game on her buttons, but she does so with way bigger threats outside of the close range, and her conversion ability is excellent once she has a single charge card on deck. Jam is the queen of rushdown in +R. Like, once she gets on top of you, her mobility, her damage output, and her pressure are all oppressive. She has buttons that make up for the range deficiency in spades. Her overall mix-up, and I'm putting this in quotes even though you can't see me on camera, when she doesn't have a card is nothing special, but the thing is, Jam doesn't need to be a can opener to excel at what she does. It can be a challenge for her to get into range in certain matchups. Characters who can zone her out can give her a bit of a problem. That's just the nature of being a rushdown character. But once she's in, her rushdown and pressure are elite, without question. As soon as she has 25% meter or a single card, her threat goes through the roof. She has multiple top-tier buttons. Forward heavy is throw invulnerable and massively plus on block. She has a very fast standing low in 5K. Her crouching slash is an excellent button to make trades with because it causes stagger on counter hit. And in addition to all this, all her combos, once she has a card, lead into consistent corner carry. They give you a consistent knockdown, which gives you a consistent recharge on your cards. So basically, once she starts hitting you, she's just going to put you in the same situation again. And this character really only needs to hit you twice and then you die. Defensively, her reversal options aren't very special without a charge. Her Dragon Punch style kick is very, very mediocre. With a charge, it's better, but that's still a pretty heavy investment for a reversal for Jam. But Jam has parry, which means that she's allowed to circumvent a whole lot of defensive situations that many characters cannot. That parry is very, very good and very difficult to deal with. It forces a lot of characters into much more linear offense and Oki situations because you have to go low on Jam. If you try to meaty her with mids and highs, you're going to have bad time. And then once she gets her way into range, once she's there, has a card charged, or even if she just has 25% to threaten you with Force Break Puffball, she is nigh impossible to escape from. If you cannot counterpoke her approach some way or another, you might be in trouble. She also has some of the best conversions in the game. She can take stray hits, turn it into gigantic damage, and as I said, she's going to knock you down, charge up cards, and then it's going to happen again. So, Jam is basically just a much more well-put-together package of the game plan that Soul wants to run. She's not quite as bulldoggy as Order Soul in nature, but it doesn't matter because her resources she needs to build up to be a threat just happen with the most innocuous situations, and so I think she easily is worthy of A+ billing in this game. Next, Fausto. Elven Shadow beats everyone. That's why this character is A+. Moving on. Just kidding. Sorry. Despite Faust's RNG, he's a monster. Absolute monster in +R. Similar to Axel, he trades speed for incredible range on his pokes, and they do have some notable recovery. So if you call out a poorly used poke from Faust, you can punish him quite well. Easier said than done. But outside of that issue, Faust has very, very few holes in his game, and he is extremely good at flustering even the best characters in the game with his range and his overall screen control. His pokes, both grounded and in the air, are absolutely elite. Jumping H is the stop sign in midair. You are not challenging that button. You will get swatted. On the ground, he has multiple top-tier anti-air buttons, stand kick, forward punch, and one of the most god-tier buttons ever put in Guilty Gear, crouching kick. Crouching kick just, it does it all. It's such an amazing button. It is reversal and throw safe, meaty on wake up. It has low hits. It burst baits. It anti-airs. Just crouching kick is a hell of a button. And good Faust use it all the time, and they should, because that button is dumb. In addition to all of this, he has Bomb Bag, and then, of course, the infamous RNG items that control the screen in a way that very few characters can do in this game. Yes, his items are RNG, but there are very few of them that are a poor result. Yeah, it's not fun if you get a coin, a donut, or a candy bar. That's not what you're looking for. But even if that happens, you still have godlike pokes, and you still have Bomb Bag and ways to control the screen until you get the item you do want. And the most important thing about items is that the opponent is always forced to adjust to whatever item is on the screen. Opponents cannot ignore what's going on with an item, and they have to make concessions in their game plan when it happens. On the opposite end of that spectrum, Faust rarely has to alter his game plan in any given matchup. If Faust has items on the screen, the opponent is the one changing up what they're doing, not Faust. Faust just looks at the item, understands what part of the screen is now under his control, and uses that to great effect. And despite having incredible range and space control, Faust plays up close shockingly well. He has pressure that is very, very safe. Like I said, his Oki is very strong. The ability to faultless defense cancel, jumping down kick, the drill, makes him have a high-low and throw game built in. He has a proximity unblockable that can threaten opponents who get very, very, very passive. And then you toss in some very potent force break options on top of that, and there's just not really much of a crack there for you to try and focus on to break Faust down. He has a giant hitbox, so there are a lot of Faust-only combos in the game that do make for some amusing situations, and he has no guts, so the character does not get to just survive in-game combos like some other characters can. Anji cough. But this character is one of those that I talked about how Venom can transition from playing range to up close, or how Eno can transition from playing range to up close. Faust just plays at all ranges exceedingly well. And because of the nature of items, and because some of them are so good, he can just control them and dictate the pace of play a match from the jump and never let go. And that makes him incredibly difficult to deal with in +R. Up next, Millia. So, what really hasn't been said about this character in XX at this point, right? Millia's never bad. She's never been bad in the XX series, and that's no different here. Obviously, most known for her terrifying Oki game, she is an absolute juggernaut in Plus R. Her average damage is a little bit low compared to the rest of the cast, especially if you can't optimize her very specific corner combos, and some of those only work on certain characters. And she still has a pretty weak defensive suite overall, right? No reversal without meter. Very, very low defense. This character is made of paper mache. She does explode when she gets hit. And like I said, subpar average damage, which, I made a big deal out of pointing out how difficult that was for Kai and Bridget to deal with, right? Well, there's a big difference between having subpar damage on a character that plays a well-rounded or somewhat fair game, and then having it on a character who's Millia, who has elite mobility. The only character who's more mobile in this game is Chipp, and as you can see, he's not on this list yet, so he's pretty good. And her ground pokes, while they don't offer the most impressive conversions, it's Millia. She needs one knockdown, and the party begins. Her speed, her air mobility, and the best projectile in Guilty Gear in Hairpin means she is always a threat to get in and start the mix. Hairpin is so good. I cannot tell you how ridiculous Hairpin is if you've never played Xrd or the older games. Hairpin is just a monster of a projectile. It is a free get-in tool in almost every situation. And it's Millia. Once she's in, once she knocks you down, the combination of regular disc, force break disc, secret garden, it gives her access to mix-ups that would make Marvel 2 players blush. She has incredible Oki. The way this character is built, the way her kit works is incredible. And like I said, she often needs to 3 or 4 touch you to get the round done, but it's so much easier for her to get those 3 or 4 touches than it is a character like Kai that it just doesn't matter. This character is still absolutely elite. She's not quite as busted as she was in Accent Core Vanilla, but she's still, without question, one of the best characters in the game, and she is always in a match as long as her life bar hasn't been detonated down to 0, because one knockdown and you might not get to play the game again. That is the nature of Millia, and that is the nature of her incredibly strong game that has remained constant through the entirety of the XX series. Next, Dizzy. Maybe the character got the biggest glow up period from Vanilla Accent Core to Plus R, definitely in the conversation. This character is a beast, and I think she absolutely deserves to be in the top 5. Dizzy's pokes are on the slower side. She has pretty weak defense overall because of those slow pokes. She has one reversal and coffin super that is janky at best. And she has incredibly low stun modifier. As I mentioned, she has the worst stun modifier in the game, along with Kliff. Although, thankfully for her, she does not raise her own stun by just doing things. But beyond those things, Dizzy does everything you could ever want. Her screen control rivals Faust, and her mix-up rivals Millia. So put the last 2 characters that are on this tier list together, and now you get Dizzy. Pretty good combination, right? Having access to a double air dash gives her elite air mobility, obviously. This allows her to kind of start the base of her game plan in Plus R, and that revolves entirely around her summons. Dizzy's always been pretty good at polluting the screen with things. Her various summons cover different aspects of the screen, but the Plus R versions of the fish especially are terrifying. They get to have 2 inputs put into them, so you can adjust what they're going to do to the situation. They're not tied to just doing one thing anymore, which gives her a lot of flexibility in the summons. But more importantly than anything, fish don't go away when Dizzy blocks or even when she gets hit. This means that even if you manage to call out a bad summon, or you find a way to navigate your way through the screen pollution and smack Dizzy in the mouth, if a fish is on screen, it can come back and hit you and knock you out of your combo, and she can take advantage of this. That is a huge deal. That is a almost unheard of situation in Guilty Gear, outside of very specific things like Zappa summons, right? That is terrifying. In addition, the fish themselves actually buff Dizzy's defense significantly because much like how Little Eddie can be a shield for Zato, the fish can be a shield for Dizzy, except she has no meter for when to summon them again, so it's not that big of a deal if they get swatted out of the sky. Woof. So this alone makes her very, very difficult to topple in neutral. Even though she doesn't have, like I said, god tier pokes, they're a little on the slower side. She has good anti-air, I wouldn't call it outstanding anti-air, and she often can't convert anti-airs into knockdowns. But if this character knocks you down, especially in the corner, you are going to have a bad day. Her mix-up is nigh unrivaled in this game. With summons in the corner, her double air dash allows her to do air dash mix-ups, which comes with the war crime button that is jumping down slash. The only move in the game that, for whatever reason, is throw invulnerable. Why you can't air throw this button, I don't know, but you can't. It hits incredibly low to the ground and allows really gross air dash mix-ups. But even if Dizzy doesn't want to do that, it doesn't matter. She has fuzzy mix-ups, and Dizzy is the best grappler in the game. Which you're probably like, Clade, she doesn't have a command grab. I know. This character's tick throw ability, once she has you in the corner, is off the charts. Because like I said, once the fish is on you, what are you going to do? Swing and hit the fish and then get gripped anyway? By the way, when this character throws you, she does some damage, knocks you back down in the corner, and repeats ad nauseum. It's also really hard to dead angle or burst out of these situations because the fish will eat the burst or the dead angle for her. You see what the problem is here. Once she gets you in the corner, there are a lot of characters where they just don't get to play the game anymore. Her mix-up is so strong, her tick throw ability is so strong, and the stagger ability on the fish especially are so good because even if you manage to fade the entire mix-up, right? You block the air dashes, you don't get gripped by the throw, you manage to not get hit by the fuzzy. Her offense lasts forever because she can just do stagger pressure, wait for the fish to come up and do its second command, and continue the pressure again. Add into all this that she has a great staple button in Force Break Spike, which is just the, I'm not sure what I should do, let's do the set it and forget it option. That's Force Break Spike. Incredibly good thing for just covering whatever you need covered at a given situation. Opponent faded that long, incredibly diverse pressure and mix-up string in the corner, and they're going to try and jump out. Force Break Spike. They're stuck again. You're good. Ready to go. Just incredible offense and mix-up on this character. And her screen pollution, like I said, very good. She's not easy to crack open because of the fish being such a problem. If a character can get to her and knock her down, she doesn't have great options. Again, she has another dead angle that can be low-profiled, and Coffin Super is a pretty janky reversal. But she plays Solitaire arguably even better than Millia does in this game when it comes to Okazeme. So that is why I think Dizzy deserves to be in the top 5 and why she sits near the top of A+ tier in +R. Next, Chipp. So, as I mentioned earlier, most mobile character in the entire cast, can fluster opponents by being just nigh uncatchable because how are you ever going to snag this character? And he is a threat at any range due to the FRC on teleport, his air options, and his absolutely ludicrous speed. Chipp has one true weakness in the game, and it's the same weakness he's always had. It's his defense. He's the lowest defense in the game. He absolutely explodes for a mistake. A single mistake can and will cost him rounds. But if you've been playing fighting games for any length of time, you probably know by now that making a character fragile is rarely a proper way to make them balanced. And that absolutely goes for Chipp. His ability to get on an opponent and enforce his offense is almost unrivaled. Again, teleports, so many moves, so much speed. He has the ability to punish you at any range if he notices you doing stuff and has Force Break teleport, FRC teleport on hand. And he retains a suite of really, really good buttons that are both low recovery and often have excellent frame advantage. He boasts some shockingly good conversions from things like Air Alpha Blade, and he does really high damage for a character of this style. This character can do a grip to your life bar off his good starters, and that's pretty scary for a character with this much speed, right? Defensively, not a slouch either. He has a DP that has a FRC point on it, so it can be tough to punish. Force Break Beta Blade is just an incredible Force Break and is one of the best interrupts in the game, period. He has everything. He has a tool for every job. He's really, really hard to catch, and he will fluster you to death because you know all I got to do is hit this character once. I just need that one juicy counter hit, and then I get to do Chipp life bar damage, right? Might never happen. What I will say is that the other major hurdle of this character, besides his defense, obviously, is this might be the single most difficult version of Chipp to pilot in Guilty Gear. He has very high execution demands, and again, execution does not dictate balance or where you should go on a tier list, right? But it is worth noting that a character who doesn't get to make mistakes and survive it very often, having high execution, that is a thing. It does factor in to the design and how to play the character. And it's also important that you be able to make very quick decisions to be able to maximize his mobility and his options, right? Having FRC teleport is all well and good, but if you're not good enough to make quick decisions and actually use it to punish things and threaten people at range, loses a little bit of value, obviously. But when this character is played at his highest level, he is absolutely oppressive. He can fight anyone. He can make anyone feel like they don't have options to play the game. And I personally think he almost makes an argument for giving this game a big 4 instead of a big 3. But that always lingering aspect of there is no character in the game that detonates more for a single mistake than Chipp does is the only reason I think he is not one of the S tier characters in this game, and in my opinion retains a big 3 status. So here we are, the big 3, the only S tier characters in my opinion in +R, and we start with the defensive goddess herself, Baiken. Obviously known for her defensive prowess, right? She has meterless guard cancels, completely alters the way her opponents have to play and structure their offense. Always a threat, always scary. They're not even quite as good as they used to be. Auron is notably more punishable and not quite as good as it was in Accent Core, but it doesn't matter because it's the threat of having a guard counter at all times in a game that is heavily structured around long block strings and heavy pressure, right? Baiken just gets to circumvent a ton of that against a ton of characters. She makes a lot of characters' strengths become weaknesses with her guard cancels alone. But this is +R. Baiken gets the best of both worlds. She's actually an offensive monster in this game. Her overall neutral and offense are almost as good as her defense. It's kind of ridiculous. The guard cancels are always there. They're always going to be the thing that people think of first, and you should with a character like this. Even Baku, which is her force break guard cancel that costs meter, that could just seal off one of your buttons, which eliminates your ability to use mechanics and things. That's real bad. But the real monster of this character's kit in this game is Tatami. Tatami is unreal in this game with its space control, the ridiculous disjointed hitbox it has, and the reward it provides her for using a tool that makes her incredibly safe and incredibly hard to approach is ridiculous. Good Baikens will regularly convert a counter hit Tatami into 50 to 60% damage because that's how much this character hits you for. Her conversions into the corner, and make note, I said into the corner. She doesn't have to be at the corner first to get this kind of damage if she's willing to spend some meter. She hurts. This character regularly does half-life to you off stray hits. And it's really easy to get stray hits off things like Tatami. Add into that, you know, you have roots that definitely take a little bit of effort. Don't get me wrong. She has some pretty high demand for hitting her most optimal combos. But she even gets to do things like tack on Pinwheel at the end, which is a big multi-hitting move, which is great for the end of a highly scaled combo because it just tacks on a ton of minimum damage. So you put all that together, and then on top of it, she actually has decent mix-up too. Her stand dust is safe. TKO Zonson is the fastest overhead in the game. And her throw game is shockingly good because she's one of the characters who her dash animation, when she goes into dash break, is low and vulnerable. Just low crushes moves. That's pretty good. In the corner, she gets full combos, too, off her throw. So, this character just does it all. She is nigh impossible to pressure because guard counters force you to play completely differently, right? Her ability to control space with Tatami rivals the best characters in the game in controlling space. The risk-reward is so far in her favor for throwing out Tatami that it's unreal. She doesn't need that much meter to excel. Yes, if she wants to convert outside the corner, she's going to have to spend some FRCs. Big deal. This character will have meter to do what she wants. Not without question is going to have meter to do what she wants. And then on top of it, she just does ridiculous damage. Just absolutely crushes you with her damage. Just unreal. Unreal how good this character is in this game. And how a character that has always been known for being the defensive, key of the entire game is now an offensive monster too. And that is why I believe she is, without question, one of the 3 S-rank characters in this game. So we have the final 2. I'm sure most people would have expected this. And now the question is, who do I think is the best character and who I think is the second best character? And let it be known, I believe you can make a solid argument for either of these characters. For my salt, next, Zappa. So Zappa's always been a bit of an anomaly in the XX series. What would usually happen is he'd have like some amazing options and at least one summon would be pretty good, but he'd always have something, one of his summon kits or some part of his kit that just wasn't up to snuff, and it made him feel like an incomplete character that couldn't consistently compete, right? This character is often in the argument for the best character in the game, and for good reason. His unique summon mechanic, the ability to have the 3 different normal summons and then Rao when he has 8 orbs, mean your opponent has to not only learn how to fight base Zappa, he has to learn how to fight 4 other versions of Zappa on top of it, with Sword, Ghost, Dog, and potentially Rao. The big thing that has made Zappa finally come together in this game is that he's always had pretty good mobility. This character has an elite backdash. Absolutely godly backdash. It's 11 frames. It goes really far. It's invulnerable for 10 of those frames. In addition, his dash is fast and it's extremely low profile. This character walks under all sorts of things with no problem whatsoever and has a ton of good lows. He also has really good buttons even in normal mode. His stand kick, low crushes. His far S is a projectile with incredibly disjointed hitbox that can turn into a low. Just a lot of stuff that you're like, wow, how has this character not always been broken? Well, what changed in Plus R is that now once Zappa gets a summon on screen, there are no bad ones. They are all elite. They are all fantastic, and they all excel in one way, shape, or form. The big thing is that it used to be Sword was the, oh no, I rolled the wrong thing and now I'm probably in trouble. No, not anymore. Sword's really, really disgusting. Unseeable overheads that can be done at ranges where you absolutely cannot challenge Zappa in any way, shape, or form mean that now none of his summons are a weak spot. And what usually happens in Plus R is most characters will have something in their kit that lets them deal with at least one of the summons. Sometimes they can fight 2 of the summons pretty well. There is almost no one in the game that is capable of fighting all of Zappa's summons well. At least one of them will be a problem. Dog, if he gets it, is a stop sign on offense for people because, unlike Eddie, there are multiple times where the dog has no hitbox and you can't knock it off the screen, but the dog gets to act autonomously from Zappa. So even if you're walking and putting him in block stun or hitting him, the dog can flip and knock you out of it, and that feels real bad. Then once the dog sandwiches you, you get put in some of the most gross pressure in the game. The triplets, a lot of times are the summon that a lot of people want to see, although there are notable matchups where they're godlike against certain characters. Their damage output isn't much, but their screen control and their ability to do safe mix-up, safe pressure, and basically just allow Zappa to play a complete control game is fantastic. And then, as mentioned, Sword, obviously, is ridiculous in this game. The ability to transition from overhead to low incredibly quick, especially with FRCs, the jump versions of it. And this is all stuff that Zappa can do effectively full screen, meaning that you have no way to challenge him back for doing these mix-ups. And none of this comes with obscene damage, right? No form of Zappa does obscene damage outside of extremely long dog combos or once he has Row out. And a lot of times if Zappa gets Row out, he's already won the match in the first place, so the big damage is kind of irrelevant. But the thing is even when you do the things that you would think, all right, if I knock Zappa down or I get him cornered, at least he's this weird character that's low profile, and a lot of his pokes don't really challenge things like doing good anti-air, right? Well, there's one problem. Zappa has a chance to wake up with a random summon even if he doesn't have one. So there are times where you might get a knockdown in the corner and he might wake up with dog, which means your offense has effectively been stopped without any input from Zappa whatsoever. And even if he doesn't wake up with a random summon, if Zappa doesn't have a summon, his special move that gets him summons is a DP. It's invulnerable. It's a pretty good DP at that, which means Zappa has a way to challenge pressure and challenge wake-ups. So, for the first time ever, this character is the complete package. It doesn't matter what version of Zappa is on the screen, you are at threat. The character played without a summon has fantastic buttons and can be really annoying to try and counterpoke. And you have to be careful because you don't want to get hit by DP because then the summon comes out and he gets some orbs. That's no fun. So you have to play very cautious against that. And then once a summon is on screen, depending on what it is, you're probably in trouble. For a lot of people, if Sword is on screen, they're just cooked on the spot. The vast majority of this cast doesn't have good answers to Sword. There are characters who can, characters like Axel, characters like Kliff, actually, who are good at challenging Sword. Anji, as I talked about, can sometimes Fujin through gaps in the Sword pressure. But in general, Sword is such a shutdown for so much of a cast that alone warrants Zappa being one of the two best characters in the game. And then you add in the rest of the suite with Dog and the triplets, and you have an absolute monster of a character that really is not bad in any situation ever. Again, the only thing that he's not absolutely elite at is churning out damage, but when you have the level of control and the level of safety that this character does, you don't need to do big damage because people just will never get to play the game in the first place. So the only reason I don't put Zappa as the best character in the game is that there is the RNG factor to his summons. You might not get the one you want in a given matchup. And he does have one notable hole in his game plan without summons, and that is his anti-air kit is eh. It's not non-existent, it's just eh. And so because of those two factors, there is one character and one character only I think shines ever so slightly brighter. Testament. So, what if you were top 2 in a version of Guilty Gear, got your kit completely reworked, and then became top 1? That's Testament. This character is unrivaled in +R with their options, their conversions, and simply having access to things that other characters cannot do, period. It's hard to, pick where to start with Testament, but let's start with the normals. How about that? Testament has, I would say, slower than average normals, but they have elite hitboxes and they can stifle a ton of the cast all on their own. Converting with this character off their normals is most time child's play in very common situations, which means they convert into combos, and that's where the real nightmares begin. Before we even get to that part of it, Testament's ability to be a threat playing neutral or on offense is consistent, basically at all times. Webs and trees are absolutely terrifying tools that act autonomously once they're placed on the field. This means that they offer the chance to interrupt anytime the opponent comes in their activation range, which means your opponent has to be aware at all times anytime Testament places a net, or places a tree. If you don't, you are doing it at your own peril, and you're probably in deep, deep trouble. It demands a level of awareness that almost no other fight demands. On top of this, Testament has a shockingly good anti-air suite, with buttons that you wouldn't think make good anti-airs to ward off incoming attackers, even if they don't have trees or webs on the field, right? So, neutral isn't the most fun with this character. Kind of scary, kind of difficult to deal with. You leave them alone for too long, well, now there's pollution with trees and webs everywhere. That's kind of problems. But you all know what real problems is? Once you get knocked down. Once a knockdown is scored, Testament's Oki is unreal. EXE Beast is on the same level as Millia-Disc in terms of the options that Testament can convert into, score another knockdown, and loop the entire thing back into itself. Even Testament's throws are always dangerous because Testament gets to combo off their throw into full conversions into Oki. This character also gains meter exceptionally fast and doesn't need to dump it very often for their conversions, so they can save it for things like calling out stuff with Gravedigger, or they can save it for win more tools like Master of Puppets. For those of you who aren't familiar, Master of Puppets is the super where Testament throws the key at you, and this gives them access to the powered up versions of their trees and nets. And once those things are on the field, it is oftentimes straight up checkmate for that character. The trees especially control a level of screen that is unrivaled in this game. Trying to activate it and not get hit is incredibly difficult. And that's if you even get that opportunity in the first place. Because if Testament opens you up again or gets a stray conversion, all they gotta do is knock you over to where the tree is. Because for some godforsaken reason, everything Testament does OTGs in plus R. You were by a tree, OTG'd. Combo continues. EXEVs, OTGs. All of it. He just gets to they get to continue combos forever. It's so frustrating. And it all loops back into that absolutely terrifying Oki game that's really, really, really hard to block. Left, right, high, low, strike, throw, it's all there. It's all on the table for them. Really difficult to deal with. In addition to all this, if you get hit by a tree, you get poisoned. And poison is incredibly oppressive because it's just free damage that ticks and has no impact on the scaling of Testament's combos at all. It just doesn't do anything. So you are just taking damage over time while also taking damage from pretty high damage combos that are going to loop you back into the Oki. So you'd think all this, okay, absolutely obscene offense, absolutely obscene neutral, absolutely obscene conversion that puts you into brutal Okazeme, right? There has to be a weakness with this character that has slightly slow buttons. Surely their defense can't be that good, right? Right? That's where the gap is. That's what the thing you can try and exploit. What if I told you Testament has a frame 2 counter? Warrant activates on frame 2. It has an FRC on it, so even if you bait it, it's exceedingly hard to punish. And if you get hit by it, you get poisoned and knocked down. And then you have a sad... Testament just flat out plays a different game than anybody else does in Plus R. There are plenty of characters who can give Testament a good fight. I even mentioned in the Anji matchup chart, I think Testament and Anji is an even fight. Characters like Axel can give Testament a lot of problems, but I don't think there's a single matchup in this game that anyone can say they definitively win against Testament because their kit does so many things that are just blatantly unfair and blatantly cohesive that you cannot put this character in an unwinnable situation. It is almost impossible to do so. And so for all of those things combined together, I'd also like to note I haven't even talked about Skull or Force Break Skull. That's right, I didn't even mention the Succubus stuff because it's not necessary. That's icing on the cake for this character. But all of those things combined, for my salt, I do think Testament is the best and most consistent character in all of Guilty Gear Accent Core Plus R. So, there you go. 10 years of this game, 10 years of refinement, 10 years of characters being researched and new tech found, new abilities found, players reaching new heights. For my salt, this is where it falls. And again, this isn't gospel. This isn't chiseled in stone anywhere. I'm just one Plus R player who loves this game and really wanted to take time to kind of put the cast into something that looks reasonable, at least in my and other people I have spoken to who, again, opinions I trust quite a bit, just our opinion. That's all this is. This is just opinion. If you take super umbrage one of these, I'd love to hear where you would like to see a character move up, down, or otherwise. I again, some people might feel like there needs to be more levels, like there needs to be a wider range than S to B+. But again, I think everyone is competitive in this game. It's just you're going to work way harder playing a B plus character than you are playing an S character. And when I say work harder, I don't mean that the S characters are easy to play. I just mean that their game plans are going to work more consistently in more situations. So always keep that in mind when you're assessing my nonsense that I have spouted at you for nearly 2 hours. And if you have sat through this once again, I absolutely appreciate it. Thank you so much for sitting and listening to me ramble. That's pretty much all I got. Always keep in mind matchups trump tier list. It is much more important how your characters' matchups play out than where they sit on this tier list. Yes, is it nice if you have everything for every situation? Of course it is. Playing a strong character is fun. Having more options is fun. But doesn't matter who's on this list. If you like them, you can pilot them to great success in this game. And that's what makes Plus R so far. It is a wild game with very wild options, very oppressive options, and very strong ways to pilot your characters. So I hope you enjoyed this. I took a lot of time and effort. I didn't just want to vomit a tier list out and go, all right, here's who's strong and here's not. I really wanted to make sure I gave a thorough explanation and tried to really share why I think the way I do on this list and where this game is at. So again, if you want to tell me what you think, if you think someone should move up or down, or how you feel about certain characters and their relation to the rest of the cast, by all means, leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from y'all. Again, if you want to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, it's always appreciated, never necessary. And I'm going to go rest my voice because that was an awful lot of talking. So as always, I appreciate y'all. Enjoy Plus R. Play more Guilty Gear. Y'all stay safe, take care of yourselves, and be good to each other. And more Plus R content soon. So until then, I'm going to get me some more to drink. Thanks, everybody. Peace.